The wind scoured the tundra with a ferocity that seemed eternal, a white void stretching beyond sight where sound itself froze before it could echo. The sky was a flat expanse of gray light, heavy and vast, pressing down on a land that never yielded. Beneath this endless silence, something unnatural descended through the clouds, sleek metal against ancient cold. It fell without fire or thunder, its black hull gliding through the snowstorm like a shadow, until the ground trembled and split beneath its weight. The ship settled into the ice, its form obscured by steam and drifting snow. Lights flickered along its surface, symbols in a language not born of earth pulsing like veins beneath glass. A hatch hissed open, and figures stepped into the storm. They were tall, armored in plates that shimmered faintly with internal energy, their movements precise and arrogant. The first of them paused, raising his head as if measuring the emptiness itself. His armor bore markings of command, angular patterns that glowed with cold blue light. Commander Viral surveyed the horizon with disdain. "So this is it," he said, his voice resonant through the translator embedded in his armor. "The home of the species that thought itself the measure of intelligence." His breath crystallized in the air, though his body remained unshaken by the cold. A wasteland for ghosts. His adjutant, smaller and nervous, adjusted the instruments strapped to his forearm. Atmospheric density is higher than projected. Temperature, fatal to unprotected life. Viral's mouth twisted. Then let it be fatal. This planet's weakness begins with its climate. Behind him, a dozen soldiers fanned out, carrying metallic pylons that pulsed with light. They drove them into the ground, forming a grid that shimmered faintly in the snow. "Deploy probes," Viral ordered. "I want full atmospheric mapping and geological scans. We will establish a forward command before the fleet descends." As his soldiers moved with mechanical precision, Viral stared into the white expanse. He had expected resistance, primitive perhaps, but loud, defiant. Instead, there was nothing. The storm swallowed all trace of life. He raised a hand and caught a flake of snow on his gauntlet. It melted instantly against the warmth of the suit. "Fragile," he murmured. "Everything here melts." But the tundra was not empty. Several kilometers away, hidden within a narrow depression of ice, a single human figure lay prone beneath a camouflage shroud. His rifle was buried in snow, its barrel protruding just enough for the scope to peer through a slit of light. The figure's breath fogged against his visor, each exhale controlled, silent. The heads-up display glowed faintly in front of his eye, marking the distant heat signatures of the alien landing party. "Command, this is Ghost," he whispered, his voice barely audible against the wind. Visual confirmed. Multiple hostiles, unknown species. Landing zone active. A reply came through his earpiece, calm and clipped. "Copy, Ghost. Maintain position. Do not engage until confirmation." Ghost adjusted the focus, counting. 13 on the ground. Heavy equipment. Looks like they're setting up perimeter sensors. "Understood. Continue observation. Frostbite command is tracking your feed." He smiled faintly beneath the mask. "Figures you'd call it that." Ghost was one of 5, an elite reconnaissance unit known informally as Frostbite, stationed in the Arctic region to monitor anomalous satellite readings. For weeks, the data had shown energy fluctuations unlike anything natural. Now, they had a source. Deep below the surface, inside a hollowed-out cavern masked by ice, Captain Wraith stood over a holographic map projected onto a portable console. The blue glow reflected off the frost clinging to the walls, outlining his face in cold light. He was a tall man, lean but weathered, his eyes sharp and steady. Every movement was measured, efficient, devoid of waste. Around him, 4 others worked in silence. Hound, the demolitions expert. Vega, communications and intelligence. Ash, medic, and Ghost, still feeding them visuals from the surface. They landed right where the energy spikes originated. Vega said, her gloved fingers gliding across her tablet. "Power readings off the charts. Not tech I recognize." Hound leaned against the wall, chewing on a ration stick. "The aliens, or some black budget project nobody told us about?" Wraith didn't answer immediately. "They're not ours," he said at last. "Their energy output alone could light half a city." They didn't come here by accident. Ash looked up from her kit. Then why the tundra? There's nothing here but ice and ruin. Wraith's gaze remained fixed on the map. Because nothing comes here, he replied. And if you want to hide something, or test something, this is where you do it. The comm crackled softly, Ghost's voice cutting in. They're deploying drones. I count at least 4 airborne, low altitude. They're sweeping the perimeter. Stay low, Wraith ordered. If they spot you, we lose our edge. Ghost adjusted his scope, tracking one of the drones as it moved like a silver insect through the storm. It emitted a faint hum, its sensors sweeping across the snow. They're scanning for heat, he muttered. Probably think humans can't survive this far north. Wraith's tone was almost grimly amused. Let them think that. He deactivated the map and looked to his team. We'll move closer to the ridge by nightfall. Ghost keeps eyes on them. Hound, prep charges in case we need to cut them off. Vega, keep trying to crack their comms. If they're setting up a base, I want to know why. The others nodded. In this environment, orders were followed without question. The cold didn't forgive hesitation. Outside, the storm thickened, blurring the line between sky and ground until even shadows disappeared. Within the alien encampment, virile soldiers worked methodically, assembling a structure from interlocking metallic panels. The material pulsed faintly as it fused, forming a dome that glowed like ice lit from within. Inside, holographic projections flickered to life, maps of the planet, energy readings, electromagnetic charts. One of the lieutenants approached. Commander, scans indicate strong magnetic anomalies beneath the surface. Deep caverns. Energy readings match nothing in our records. Viril's interest sharpened. Beneath us. Yes, sir. He looked down at the snow, imagining what lay hidden below. Perhaps this world is not as dead as it seems. He turned sharply. Prepare excavation teams. Whatever hides under this ice, it belongs to us. Far above, Ghost heard the whine of drills begin. He exhaled slowly, his pulse steady despite the rising tension. Command, they're digging. Looks like they found something under the surface. Copy, came Wraith's voice. Hold your position. We'll intercept before they breach anything. But even as he spoke, the snow around Ghost shifted, a tremor barely perceptible but wrong. The ice beneath him creaked, responding to something deep below. He froze, listening. The ground wasn't cracking from weight, it was breathing. Wraith, he whispered, the ground's moving. Say again, I think there's something down there with them. For a moment, the calm went silent. Then Wraith's voice returned, quiet and certain. Then we make sure whatever they wake up doesn't see daylight. The storm intensified, howling like a living thing as if the tundra itself resented intrusion. In the distance, faint blue lights pulsed from the alien camp, steady, rhythmic, like a heartbeat echoing through the ice. Ghost watched them until they vanished into the white. He had seen wars before, in deserts and jungles and cities, but never like this. This was no battlefield. This was the earth itself holding its breath. And though the aliens mocked its emptiness, they had just given it reason to remember it was alive. Snow fell in sheets, thick and blinding, erasing the world into shades of white and silence. The storm had become the human shroud, and within its fury, the hunters moved. Ghost led the forward team, crawling over the ice with the precision of a shadow. His breath formed a mist that froze instantly against his mask. Through the thermal scope, the alien camp flickered like a wound in the snow, bright signatures of arrogance and heat. He counted 7 figures, each encased in radiant armor, their forms too perfect, too clean for this place. He had learned to trust imperfection. It was what survived. He pressed his comm once, a silent signal. The storm swallowed the sound, but miles away, Wraith received it through a faint pulse of static. They've expanded the perimeter, Ghost whispered. Automated turrets and drones. They're adapting. Wraith's reply was calm, almost serene. They think adaptation means machines. Show them it means patience. Ghost adjusted his position. Below, 2 aliens worked on a power conduit, their energy cores casting halos across the snow. He could hear fragments of their speech through Vega's translation overlay. complaints about the temperature, laughter about human weakness. They still believed the Tundra was lifeless. Ghost exhaled once, steadying his rifle. He wasn't ordered to kill yet, but he wanted them to understand fear first. His finger hovered over the trigger before he lowered the weapon again. The cold had taught him restraint. In the command cavern, Wraith watched the data flicker across Vega's console. Her gloved hands worked swiftly, filtering alien signals. "They've lost 2 drones to ice buildup," she said. "Another spinning out near Sector North." Hound grinned, his breath misting. "Maybe they'll figure out we're not the only thing that bites out here." Ash gave him a flat look. "Let's hope they don't figure it out too soon." Wraith leaned closer to the map. "We hit them at dawn. They won't expect movement in this cold, not after a storm like this." His gaze lifted briefly toward the tunnel entrance, where the wind wailed against reinforced barriers. "Until then, we keep the pressure invisible. Vega, feed false heat signatures southward. Make them chase ghosts." "Already done," she said. "They'll think we're regrouping near the ridge." "Good. The more they look there, the less they see here." Outside, the alien commander Viral grew, increasingly agitated. The storm had damaged several drones, and the temperature continued to plummet beyond the limits of their gear. His adjutant approached with visible unease. "Commander, the power cells are losing efficiency. The energy conduits are freezing from the inside out." Viral's eyes glowed faintly behind his visor. "We conquered planets that burned hotter than suns. Do you think I will yield to frozen air?" He stepped closer, the ice crunching beneath his boots. "Increase the core output. I want this base operational within the hour." "But the readings—" "Do it," Viral snapped. "If this world wishes to defy us, then we will burn its defiance from beneath the snow." The adjutant obeyed. Sparks leapt from the conduit as power surged through it, melting nearby snow into steam. The sudden warmth spread across the camp, a beacon against the storm. In the distance, Ghost smiled grimly. They had just lit a target large enough for the entire Arctic to see. When dawn came, it was a dull, gray smear across the horizon. The storm had passed, leaving the world silent and deceptively calm. Frostbite moved. Wraith led the assault from the western ridge, his team emerging from the snow like phantoms. Each step was deliberate, measured, soundless. Ghost flanked from the east, his sniper rifle wrapped in cloth to muffle any metallic glint. Hound carried the shaped charges, moving low to the ground, while Vega provided overwatch from a concealed ice shelf. The aliens were tired. Hours of malfunctioning equipment and failed sensors had dulled their vigilance. One soldier wandered too far from the group, his armor steaming in the cold. Ghost watched through his scope, waiting until the alien's back turned. He squeezed the trigger once. The sound was barely audible, a whisper lost in the wind. The alien fell without a cry, a dark mark against the endless white. Viral's voice cut through the comm network instantly. "Report. Sector 3, respond." No reply came. Another silence, longer this time. Then, faintly, a second voice, trembling. "Contact lost. Thermal interference." The transmission ended in static. Viral straightened, his jaw tightening. "They are here." Wraith's signal pulsed through the comms. "Begin Phase 2. Hound moved swiftly, placing charges along the edges of the alien supply units, small, silent discs that burrowed into the snow. He worked with the calm of someone who had done this 100 times before. "Charges set," he whispered. Vega's voice followed. "They're scanning for movement. You've got 30 seconds before they sweep your sector." "Plenty," Hound said, slipping into a hollow beneath the snow. The charges detonated in a flash of white and heat, not loud enough to echo, but bright enough to panic. The alien base erupted in confusion. Drones spiraled, equipment caught fire, and the air filled with the high-pitched whine of systems overloading. Viral shouted orders, but his voice was drowned in the chaos. Frostbite used the distraction perfectly. Wraith advanced, rifle steady, firing in short, precise bursts. Each shot found a target, each movement calculated. They didn't fight for glory. They fought to erase invaders from their home. Viral raised his plasma rifle and fired into the storm. The bolt cut through the air, melting snow into vapor, but struck nothing. "Show yourselves," he roared. "Face us if you dare." His challenge vanished into the storm, unanswered. The humans didn't respond with words. They answered with the silence of the land itself. Ghost picked off another alien from the ridge. Ash, moving behind Wraith, patched a wounded soldier without breaking stride. Vega jammed alien comms entirely, filling their network with distorted echoes of their own voices. For the first time, the aliens began to feel something they hadn't known since before their conquest began: doubt. Viral stood amid the wreckage, frost forming over his armor. He stared into the white void where his enemies hid and felt the weight of something ancient pressing back. The tundra wasn't empty. It was alive. It moved with them, fought with them, killed with them. Wraith watched from his vantage point, heart steady. He could see the alien commander now, silhouetted against the broken machines. He lifted his rifle, aligned the sights, and then paused. Killing the leader now would end the fight too quickly. They needed the invaders to understand what kind of world they had mocked. He lowered the rifle. "Let him retreat," he said softly. "Fear's a better teacher than death." The humans faded once more into the snow, leaving behind burning wreckage and bodies half buried in frost. Viral knelt beside one of his fallen soldiers, touching the frozen armor. The storm had taken them so quietly that it seemed impossible they had ever lived. He looked around, but there was nothing, no footprints, no trails, no proof of his enemy. Only the cold remained. He turned his face upward, toward the dark clouds gathering again on the horizon. "If this planet wants war," he murmured, "it will have it." From the distance, Wraith's voice drifted through static to his team. "They're regrouping," Vega reported. "We've hurt their pride, not their command." "Good," Wraith said. "Pride breaks before armor does." Ghost wiped frost from his scope, eyes narrowing as the aliens began pulling back toward their ship. "They'll come harder next time." "That's what we're counting on," Wraith replied. "Let them bring everything they have. The tundra will take the rest." The wind began to rise again, carrying the promise of another storm. Ghost looked up, snow swirling around him like ash. The blizzard wasn't a threat. It was home. He whispered into the calm, half to himself, half to the storm. "They still don't get it. We don't survive the cold. We are the cold." The wind swallowed his words, carrying them into the distance where the aliens retreated under a dying sky, unaware that the storm itself had become humanity's waiting weapon. The tundra had gone silent again, but beneath that silence lived tension, coiled, waiting, alive. The air shimmered faintly from the afterglow of the destroyed alien machinery, and the smell of scorched ozone clung to the wind. Wraith stood at the edge of a ridge overlooking the ruined outpost, his cloak snapping in the gale. The alien camp below was in disarray, its structures half buried in snow, lights flickering weakly. Through the haze of cold, he saw the enemy regrouping. The moment he had anticipated had come. They were adapting, not retreating. Vega's voice crackled softly through the calm. "Movement east of your position. They're setting up new emitters. Looks like they're hardening their perimeter." "Let them build," Wraith replied. His voice carried the weight of patience forged by years of hardship. "Every wall they raise makes them easier to bury." Ghost lay prone beside him, rifle resting steady on the ice. "You ever get the feeling they still don't think we're human?" Wraith didn't glance at him. "Let them think whatever makes them feel safe." Down below, the alien commander Viral paced among his soldiers. The storm had stripped the arrogance from their movements. They no longer laughed. He had lost 9 warriors in the ambush and countless drones, yet his pride refused to bend. The humans had wounded him, not in body but in belief. "They hide in the cold because they cannot fight in the open," he said to his troops, voice carrying over the howling wind. "This is not warfare, it is cowardice. We will burn them out." His adjutant, armor cracked with frost, hesitated. "Commander, our thermal output is unstable. Another surge could rupture the cores." "Then we do not surge," Viral growled. "We detonate." The humans heard the rising hum moments later. Vega's scanners flared red across her display. "They're overloading their cores." Heat spike, massive. Hound cursed under his breath. They're turning their base into a furnace. Wraith didn't hesitate. Ghost marked their command point. Hound, set charges on the ridgeline. Vega, coordinate interference. We'll use their heat to mask our own. The team moved with mechanical precision. Ghost adjusted his scope, tracking the glow from the alien core as it pulsed brighter. Each bead of light reflected off his visor like a heartbeat counting down. He marked 3 targets, power nodes anchoring the base. Hound crawled through the snow like a burrowing predator, planting explosives beneath the crusted drifts. The storm muffled every sound except the distant thrum of alien energy. Inside the base, Viral stood before the core, its light washing across his armor. They want the cold? Let them drown in fire, he hissed. The adjutant began the sequence reluctantly. A hum deepened into a roar, vibrations shaking the snow underfoot. Charges set, Hound reported. If we time this right, their explosion becomes ours. Wraith's gaze never left the alien camp. We don't time it right, we time it perfect. Vega, on my mark, drop their comm frequencies. Ghost, when the flare rises, take the commander. Ghost inhaled slowly. Copy. The hum reached a fever pitch. Ice began to crack around the alien's machinery. Steam hissed as snow melted into water, then vaporized entirely. The tundra moaned under the strain of shifting temperature. And then, at the exact second the energy peaked, Wraith gave the word. Now! Vega unleashed an electromagnetic pulse that sliced through the air like lightning. The alien systems stuttered. Their energy surge backfired, igniting the overloaded cores. A bloom of white fire consumed the camp, so bright it turned the sky pale. The shockwave rippled outward, throwing snow into the air like shattered glass. Hound's charges detonated in perfect harmony, funneling the explosion downward into the ground. The result was catastrophic, a crater forming beneath the enemy base, swallowing their structures whole. Wraith's team hunkered low, the shockwave washing over them in a roar of heat and light. For a brief moment, the tundra burned. Then, just as quickly, the flames died, devoured by the returning cold. Steam froze midair, falling as ice dust. When the world steadied, Ghost adjusted his scope again. Through the haze, he found the alien commander. Viral was alive, his armor scorched and cracked, his weapon arm sparking. Around him, only a handful of survivors remained. Ghost lined up his shot. Permission to finish it, he said quietly. Wraith was silent for a long moment. Negative. Not yet. Ghost frowned but obeyed. He lowered the rifle, though his finger lingered on the trigger. He's going to keep coming. I want him to, Wraith replied. The moment he fears death, he stops thinking. I want him thinking. Below, Viral staggered to his feet. He looked across the ruin, his breathing ragged, condensation freezing on his cracked visor. The humans had turned the planet itself against him. He shouted into the cold, his voice raw. You think this proves strength? You are animals hiding behind weather and chance. His words carried, faint but clear, through the wind. Wraith listened without expression. He still doesn't understand, he said softly. Ash approached, her face half hidden behind her frost-lined mask. Maybe he never will. Wraith turned toward her. Then that's what breaks him. Not defeat, understanding too late. Vega's console flickered, picking up fragmented alien transmissions. They're calling for reinforcements. Orbital support. Then we disappear, Wraith said. Ghost, lead them north. Let them think we're retreating. We'll make them fight shadows until they burn themselves out. As the team began to withdraw, the storm began to return. The sky darkened again, clouds thickening until the horizon blurred into nothingness. Ghost moved ahead, scouting the path through a canyon of ice. His boots crunched softly, every step a whisper. He glanced back once at the smoking crater, then vanished into the blizzard. Viral watched the shapes fading into the storm. For the first time, a flicker of unease crossed his face. These humans didn't behave like any enemy he had fought. They didn't defend territory, they defended silence. He turned to his adjutant. Signal the fleet. Prepare atmospheric bombardment. If the ground refuses to yield, we will scorch it. The adjutant hesitated again, but one look from his commander silenced him. At once, he said, far from the crater, Frostbite regrouped in a hollowed ice cavern. Their breath came in plumes of mist, their faces streaked with frost. Wraith studied each of them, reading fatigue in their eyes, but resolve in their stillness. They're going to call the sky down on us, Vega said. Good, Wraith replied. That means they've stopped underestimating us. He rested a gloved hand on the wall of ice, feeling the vibration of distant thunder, alien bombardments already warming the upper air. The more fire they bring, the more the ice will fight back. Hound gave a weary grin. That your plan, boss? Let the planet do the killing. Always has been, Wraith said. We're just here to aim it. Ash looked toward the narrow cave entrance, where light from distant explosions glowed faintly. What if they actually melt the tundra? Then we make sure they drown in what they've created, Wraith answered. The cold remembers its allies. The team fell silent, listening to the distant rumble above. Every sound carried the promise of escalation, of a battle moving towards something greater than any one fight. The storm howled louder, carrying with it snow, so fine it looked like dust. Ghost's voice came softly over the calm. Incoming signatures. Multiple ships entering the upper atmosphere. They're bringing reinforcements. Wraith's response was measured, almost calm. Then, this is where it starts for real. He looked around at his team. 5 figures standing in the heart of a frozen world, their breath visible, their hearts steady. They mocked the cold, he said. Now they'll learn why it never dies. Outside, light bled across the horizon as alien fire began to fall from the sky. The snow rose to meet it, the storm twisting into a blinding wall. Between the two forces, humanity waited, still as the ice, ready for whatever came next. The sky burned, streaked with fire as alien bombardments tore through the clouds. Each strike sent shockwaves rolling across the tundra, turning the frozen surface into a trembling sea of fractured ice. Wraith's team moved through the chaos, their figures barely visible beneath the storm's veil. The air tasted of metal and ozone, the sound of destruction muffled by snow. Every blast painted the horizon in flashes of blue and red, each one closer than the last. Yet amid the ruin, the humans moved with purpose, guided not by orders from above, but by instinct honed through suffering. Ghost led the advance, crouched low against the wind. Through the blizzard swirl, his visor displayed the alien ships descending, sleek, angular shapes cutting through the storm like predators. Their engines howled, sending gales of heat that warped the very air. They're deploying ground units, he said, voice steady despite the rumble overhead. Full-scale drop. Looks like half a regiment. Wraith's voice came through, calm and even. Then we don't fight half of them. We fight the storm with them inside it. Hound chuckled dryly, checking the last of his charges. Always wanted to see an army get swallowed whole. Vega's console flickered, warning lights flashing. Energy readings spiking everywhere. They're heating the surface, trying to melt the tundra to flush us out. Wraith scanned the terrain. Steam rose from fissures where the snow had begun to liquefy, spreading in thin, eerie mists. They think melting the ground will make it safe. They don't realize they're standing on a grave, waiting to open. Ash adjusted her medical pack and looked at him, voice soft but steady. You're planning something. Tell us. He turned to face them, his eyes pale under the frost coating his mask. We hit their center drop point and collapsed the ice shelf beneath it. The ground below isn't solid. It's hollow. Old glacial caverns. One detonation, and their whole formation sinks into the frozen sea. Hound gave a low whistle. That's suicide if we're still in the radius. We won't be, Wraith said, if we time it right. Vega frowned. And if we don't, then the tundra keeps what belongs to it. Wraith replied simply. Either way, they stop advancing. Ghost looked toward the descending ships, their lights flickering through the storm. How many do you think we'll take with us? Wraith's tone was almost serene, enough to remind the galaxy that cold doesn't yield. The team moved into position. Each step was measured, the snow crunching faintly underfoot. Around them, the alien army emerged in full, rows of soldiers in gleaming armor, weapons glowing with internal fire. Their commander stood among them, his once pristine armor now scarred and blackened. Viral had survived more than pride could justify, but vengeance burned colder now in his chest than even the tundra around him. He looked across the storm, sensing movement he could not see. "Spread the thermal fields," he ordered. "No more hiding. We bring light to this darkness." Beams of crimson light swept through the blizzard, carving holes in the storm. For brief moments, Wraith and his team appeared like ghosts in the flare, shapes vanishing before recognition could form. Ghost took position high on an ice ridge, his rifle trained on the commander's location. Through the scope, he could see the faint shimmer of heat around Viral's chest. "I've got him," he whispered. "Not yet," Wraith replied. "Wait for the ground to move." Hound's hands worked quickly, embedding the final charge deep into the snowpack. The detonator blinked once, waiting for signal. "All set," he said. "We just need the right push." Vega monitored the alien frequencies. "They're converging on our coordinates. 20 seconds before they reach optimal range." Wraith lifted his rifle and looked toward the advancing army. "Then that's our 20 seconds. He pressed the comm. "Ghost, on my mark. Create confusion. Hound, prepare the trigger. Vega, jam their uplink once they lose formation. Ash, stay behind cover and be ready for evac." The storm howled, a wall of sound that swallowed the world. When Wraith spoke again, his voice was lost to everything but the comm channel. "Mark," Ghost fired. The first shot struck an alien officer square through the visor, shattering it in an instant. The second hit an exposed power cell, detonating in a flash that blinded the front ranks. Panic rippled through the formation. Hound triggered the charges on the flanks, sending eruptions of snow and fire into the air. The aliens stumbled, disoriented, firing wildly into the white abyss. Wraith led the advance from the center, moving through the smoke like a phantom. He fired twice, each shot deliberate, each one lethal. Vega's interference blanketed the alien network, turning their commands into static. Viral roared in fury, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Find them. Kill them. Burn this frozen pit to ashes." But the ground beneath his troops began to groan. Cracks spiderwebbed across the ice, faint at first, then spreading fast. Wraith's voice came through softly. "Now." Hound hit the detonator. The world convulsed. A thunderclap rolled across the tundra as the entire shelf gave way, collapsing into the black chasm below. The alien formation vanished in a surge of snow and flame, swallowed by the earth itself. The sound of the collapse was deafening, echoing through the frozen miles like the voice of the planet reclaiming its own. Ghost barely made it clear of the blast radius, sliding down an ice ridge and taking cover behind jagged stone. Vega's console went dark, the interference fried by the shockwave. Hound's laughter crackled through the calm. "That's one way to make an entrance." Wraith didn't answer. He stood near the edge of the crater, staring down into the abyss where light still flickered faintly from burning wreckage. Steam rose in thick plumes, turning to frost as it met the wind. "Report," he said quietly. "One minor burn. Nothing serious," Ash replied. "Everyone's alive." Ghost climbed up beside him, his cloak tattered, rifle still slung across his back. "Think he's dead?" Wraith's gaze stayed fixed on the crater. "If he's not, he'll wish he was." Far below, amid the debris, a faint movement stirred, metal shifting against ice. Viral pulled himself from the wreckage, his armor shattered, one arm gone entirely. Around him, the remains of his army lay buried beneath layers of ice. He stared upward, vision blurring, and saw faint silhouettes watching from the rim. For the first time, he felt the weight of something greater than defeat. It was reverence, unwanted and bitter. The humans hadn't destroyed him out of hatred, but out of understanding. They had become the storm itself. He fell back into the dark. The silence that followed was immense. The snow fell gently again, covering the scars of battle as though the world had decided to forget. Wraith turned away from the crater. "Mission's over," he said. "We move before more arrive." Hound looked back once. You think Command will believe it? They don't have to, Vegas said. They'll see the crater. As they began their trek north, the storm eased, and faint light broke through the clouds. The tundra stretched endlessly ahead, unforgiving, eternal. Ghost walked beside Wraith, their shadows long against the pale horizon. What do we tell them when they ask how we did it? Wraith's answer was quiet. Tell them the truth. The tundra fought for us. Ash glanced over her shoulder at the distant crater, already vanishing beneath drifting snow. And if they come back? Wraith's eyes narrowed, the wind tugging at his hood. Then we wait. He paused, watching a column of sunlight pierce the storm, glinting off the ice like a blade. We're not freezing, he said softly. We're waiting. The wind carried his words into the endless white, where the ghosts of battle lingered only as whispers. Above them, the aurora shimmered once more, faint but defiant, as if the planet itself acknowledged its guardians. And far below, under the sealed ice, the wreckage of an alien army lay entombed, mute proof of what the universe had forgotten, that in the coldest places humanity endures,